Chapter 8. Catherine's office was a monument to Hollywood's golden age, where even the dust particles seemed to have agents and 3 picture deals. A framed movie poster from A Trip to the Moon was hung on the back wall over faded gold damask wallpaper. Her desk, a behemoth of polished mahogany, looked like it had been lifted from the set of Citizen Kane, mainly because it had been. The initials OW were carved in the underside somewhere. Catherine would have preferred to update it a little, but for that she'd need approval from him, and she was very careful about which battles she chose to fight. Parts of the Hollywood machine would be ever trapped in amber like a prehistoric mosquito, and the cinema protectorate was there to ensure it stayed ever thus. She paced behind the desk, phone pressed to her ear, heels click-clacking on the hardwood floor. Her free hand gesticulated wildly, and she wished she could reach through the phone line and throttle the person on the other end. "For the last time, Quentin, you can't do that for your 10th film," Catherine said in a voice that managed to effectively balance exasperation and rage. "I don't give a damn if it's the godfather of foot fetish films. The light is never turning green." His voice exploded through the receiver, a mix of whiskey-soaked pretension mingling with the phantom scent of celluloid. She held the phone away from her ear. She didn't know what he was saying, but she didn't need to know. It was always the same. He was probably calling her a fascist, expressing how the script was a fucking masterpiece, and then for some reason drop-referencing the Muppets. She lifted the phone to her ear. "It was an actual pitch, Catherine. I didn't know they were filming me and fucking Kermit." Catherine dropped her phone again and sat in the chair behind her desk. That was the one thing in the room she'd updated. Her chair was sleek, modern and ergonomic, like donning a full body glove. The previous one, lifted from rope, had style, but no substance, and the cushion pad was thinner than the plot of Death Proof, not that she was rid of it altogether. It sat in the furthest corner of her office, no doubt plotting its revenge. One evening she had taken it out to the trash, only to find it back in her office the following morning. She didn't know if the janitor returned it or the chair had made its own way back. It seemed safer not to ask. She wondered how the CP agent was doing with Milo Piven. Hopefully he'd been derailed. Perhaps it would be worth a visit to the studio lot. But then she curled her lip. There was nothing Catherine detested more than a site visit. She glanced at her phone. Well, almost nothing. The verbal tsunami had subsided. She raised the phone to her ear. "So what do you think?" Quentin asked. "I think that unless you want your swan song premiering between Is It Cake and Storage Wars, you'll go back to plot 39. It's the only one you're good at." "Why do I always have to compromise? Why can't the protectorate—" Catherine grit her teeth. "Don't you dare Mr. Pink the organisation, you overgrown video store clerk. I've been protecting cinema from itself when you were still alphabetizing the adult section. Now you have 41 hours to submit a revised draft of your script. That's 2 more than we ever gave John Ford. And so help me, God, if I see one more foot close-up or needlessly non-linear timeline, and I'll make sure the only thing you're splicing is 1950s educational films on proper posture. You fucking get me? Or do you need me to write it across the face page of your script?" Silence. And then, "I fucking get you." "Excellent. Talk to you next week." Catherine slammed down the phone with enough force to make her Newton's cradle dance. Wrangling directors was like herding cats through a dog show while trying to convince them it was actually a film festival. Feral, creatively unhinged cats with egos bigger than the goddamned Hollywood sign. She glanced over at the rope chair. "What are you looking at?" The chair remained mute. A timid knock sounded on her office door. "Come in?" Catherine stood, straightening her jacket and smoothed her expression into something resembling professional calm. Grant entered, looking like he'd aged a decade since their last meeting. His suit was rumpled, and his tie was askew. Dark circles under his eyes suggested days without sleep. He clutched a manila folder to his chest like it was the script for Vital Parts. "You look terrible," Catherine said. Her lips twitched in the ghost of a smile. "Insomnia." "Spill." He walked over to the rope chair and dragged it up to Catherine's desk. Then he sat. The report from Agent X about Milo Piven. Catherine claimed her chair as well. Ah, yes, our aspiring Capra. So I take it Harrington wasn't successful in redirecting him towards Storm of Steel 3, or anything else suitably explosive and devoid of world-ending implications? Nope. Grant opened the folder and slid a document across her desk. And now it's worse. Catherine narrowed her eyes. How much worse? The Golden Path worse. She froze. The Golden Path had almost ended them all. He found it, Grant reported, and he wants to film it. So shut him down. Can't. He's funding it himself. Catherine's eyebrows nearly achieved escape velocity. With what? His life savings and a kidney he sold on the dark web. His indie film festival earnings. He's using the prize money to bankroll the... End of Times? Grant nodded. Catherine sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. They always do, don't they? These bright-eyed idealists with their dreams of changing the world through the power of cinema. It'd be adorable if it wasn't so apocalyptically dangerous. Grant ran a hand through his hair, probably the only brushing it had in 3 days. Maybe we should run this up to the big man. If Piven's really serious about making this film... No, we're not bothering him with this, not yet. She drummed her fingers on the desk, momentarily lost in thought. And then a slow, devious smile spread across her face. Let Piven make his movie. For a moment, Grant said nothing. Then he blinked. I'm sorry, did you say, let him make the film? As in your greenlighting plot 147? Think about it, Grant. What happens every time when we shut these projects down completely? They don't get made. Catherine rolled her eyes. Yes, but what else? He stared at her blankly. The filmmakers become obsessed. They go underground, scraping together resources, determined to prove us wrong. And then we have to call in the hired guns. But if we let them make their precious masterpiece and don't interfere until the last possible moment... Understanding dawned on his face. They burn out. Spectacularly. Catherine leaned back in her very comfortable chair with a faraway look in her eyes. Remember what happened to Orson Welles? The poor bastard thought he could take on the system. By the time we were done with him, he was hawking cheap wine on TV. Have X give Piven the Welles treatment. The other side of the world? His eyes widened. That's diabolical. It's foolproof. Always has been. Her smile turned predatory. We let Piven think he's getting away with something, all while subtly sabotaging his production. By the time he realizes what's happening, he'll be so deep in financial and emotional hell he'll never even try to make another film again. Grant nodded and got to his feet. I'll relay the instructions to X immediately. Make sure X knows to be subtle. We want Piven to think it's just standard Hollywood bad luck, not deliberate interference. Understood. Grant hesitated at the door. Are you sure about this? If something goes wrong and the film gets made... It won't, Catherine said with the kind of iron certainty that had crushed better directors than Milo Piven into straight-to-streaming submissions. Now go. I have a call with Nolan in 10 minutes and need to prepare my time is not actually a flat circle speech. Grant left, closing the door behind him. Then Catherine got up and walked over to the far wall of her office. It was located in the O of the Hollywood sign and had an enormous window with a panoramic view of Los Angeles, because even the Cinema Protectorate understood the value of sterling production design. The city sprawled out in a glittering tapestry of dreams and delusions. And more dreamers arrived daily, desperately hoping they would be the next big thing, without any way of knowing their fates were decided in this very room. Catherine pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the warmth of the California sun. Her eyes drifted to a small imperfection in the corner of the window, a crack spreading like a spider's web. Much like the peeling wallpaper behind her, it was yet another subtle reminder that even the mightiest empires crumbled. She turned back to her desk, walked over and picked up a framed photograph. It showed a much younger version of herself, standing beside a fresh-faced Steven Spielberg. She'd caught the attention of the man upstairs when she'd steered him away from his original, potentially reality-shattering concept for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The original version had involved time travel, talking dolphins, and a subplot about interdimensional jazz that would have torn the fabric of reality apart at the seams. Others had tried, but she had succeeded. The boy had talent, but like all of them, he needed a firm hand to guide him away from the abyss. And she had been that hand. Her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID. "For fuck's sake, not again!"